Also. So today we will be starting with the next chapter, that is photosynthesis. Most likely we should be able to finish this chapter by next week because it doesn't have much content and most of the things you already know about photosynthesis. Okay, so this whole part, some of it is removed. I'm yet to remove it. I will just highlight and put it in red which has been removed so that you know what not to study even from the slides, because slides to anywhere we will remove, but from textbook if you refer to this syllabus that should be present. Yeah, I don't have to go through this. I will just skip that part. Directly coming to this photosynthesis. So you obviously know what photosynthesis means. So photos, it means light. Synthesis means combining together or something forming new. So that is what is photosynthesis. That's where the word is coming from. It is a process by which the phototrophs, they will convert the light energy into chemical energy, and which is later used as like energy for the cellular activities. That is commonly known fact. Now the chemical energy that is stored in the form of sugars, which is created from water and carbon dioxide. That means this reaction, if you look at the bottom, carbon dioxide, CO2 plus H2O, that is water, in presence of sunlight, it will produce glucose and it will produce oxygen as a byproduct. Now, this reaction or this trapping or this action of sunlight does not directly occur on the molecules. It happens through different pigments which are called as photosynthetic pigments. And that is where there are these 4 different photosynthetic pigments: chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, carotene, and xanthophyll. We will look into the details of these pigments later. Now, this is again a commonly known fact that all the green plants and few other autotrophic organisms, they utilize photosynthesis to synthesize the nutrients using carbon dioxide, water, sunlight, and the byproduct is oxygen. Now, it also talks green plants and few other autotrophic organisms. Does anyone know what does this mean? What are these autotrophic organisms? Oh, you have studied autotrophs and all? Oh, okay. Perfect. So, Tanisha said, autotrophs, those who synthesize their own food on their own. So, now the moment these organisms are like able to synthesize their own food, obviously they will also have some photosynthetic pigments so that they can prepare their own food. There are certain green algae or blue-green algae or certain bacteria which has photosynthetic pigment. They are able to do the function of photosynthesis and perform their synthesize their own food. So that is this autotrophic organism. Now, when we talk in general of the nutrition in plants, green plants, they can be rather they are always autotrophic because of their being able to ability to perform the photosynthesis and create their own food. So again, the same definition comes again and again, but with more accuracy now. So the process by which green plants make their own food from carbon dioxide and water by using sunlight energy in the presence of chlorophyll, it's called as photosynthesis. So that's the definition of this photosynthesis process. And as we know, oxygen is released during photosynthesis. Now, this process is usually represented with different what we say facts or statement. So first B, it takes place in the green leaves of a plant. We know this. The food is prepared in the green leaves to form a simple sugar called glucose. Yeah, that the sugar that we commonly eat is not the term that is being used here. This sugar means carbohydrates. So a simple carbohydrate or a simple sugar is glucose, and that is synthesized during photosynthesis. Extra glucose that is changed into another food that is starch. Now again, when you would have studied plant cell, I'm sure you have drawn those dotted structures, which we call as starch granules. So these starch granules are nothing but this excess of glucose gets converted into polymerized glucose, which is nothing but the starch. And this starch is stored in the leaves of the plant for whenever the plant is in need. It's like something like fat deposits in our body, right? If we starve our cells for longer duration, the fat deposits, they start burning completely. They will be broken down and they will be utilized for the generation of the energy. This is something like that in terms of analogy. Starch will be utilized when the plant is not able to synthesize its own food. The green plant, they will convert the sunlight energy into chemical energy by making the carbohydrate. So this process of sunlight energy or photon energy to chemical energy, that happens in the photosynthesis process. I assume there are no questions because these are all general facts in whole of this so far. Now, the pigment that helps in this process of photosynthesis is called chlorophyll, and the structure in which these chlorophyll pigments are present, that is called as chloroplast, right? So this is microscopic cellular organelle, one of the organelle in the plant cell, and which will absorb the light energy and that will pass on that light energy to the carbon dioxide and oxygen, and the further formation of the glucose will happen there, which is a chemical reaction, or you can call it biochemical reaction. And the oxygen will enter through the tiny pores of the stomata located in the epidermis of the leaves, and then it will be going out of that stomata structure. So carbon dioxide will be taken through the stomata, oxygen will be gone out from the stomata, which is like an exchange process through the stomatal structure in the epidermis. Another byproduct of the photosynthesis is the sugars like glucose and fructose. So in some of the cases, which is rare, fructose can also be formed when there is too much of oxidation process happening. But again, we need not go into that detail, but just we need to know that it does happen in some cases. Now, a general fact, like photosynthesis does not happen only in leaves. It does happen sometimes in the stem or whichever are the green parts, like for example, sepals, which are still green in nature. So there also these photosynthetic reaction occurs, and they will give rise to the sugar in that particular area, which will ultimately help the whole of the plant and the different plant parts to grow further. So that is the common theme there. Now, the sugar molecules, so the last point, these sugar molecules then combine with each other to form more complex carbohydrate, being cellulose and starch. Cellulose is used for cell wall formation in the plant cell, and starch is used for the food in the plant cell. And cellulose is considered to be one of the structural material used in the plant cell walls. So that is the so far information. Okay, any question, anyone so far? I assume this was like pretty easy part, but still, if anyone wants to ask something, please feel free to ask. Okay, so now these will be the newer topics in this chapter for you people. That is the processes or the steps within the photosynthesis reaction. First one is the absorption, second is conversion, third is reduction. So absorption is the absorption of sunlight by the chlorophyll, then conversion of that light energy into chemical energy, and then it will split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen with the help of the energy that is received from the light source. And the third step being the reduction of the carbon dioxide by hydrogen to form the carbohydrate like glucose. So this is a reduction reaction. Now I assume you would know what is oxidation reduction reaction from chemistry, right? So that is reduction of the carbon dioxide by hydrogen to form the carbohydrate like glucose by utilizing the chemical energy. So we will talk in detail about all of these processes, how exactly does this photosynthesis happen, and not just the simpler reaction. So that part will come later. So where does this process of photosynthesis occur? It occurs in the chloroplast, which is the site of photosynthesis, and it is the same is the case with the blue green algae, because they also have certain chloroplast structure. Now, in case of plant cell, there might be quite a lot of number of chloroplasts. In case of blue-green algae, it might be less in number, but still the function remains same. Now, all of the green plants or all of the green parts of the plant, like I said earlier, including green stem, green leaves, and the sepals, they will comprise of the chloroplast, or what is also known as green color, plastids. I assume you would again remember what plastids are. These are specialized structures which encompasses your chloroplast and ultimately the genetic material which is present in this chloroplast. Now these cell organelles, they are present only in the plant cells, then they are located in the mesophyll cells of the leaves. Mesophyll cells, if you remember, we were looking at the section of the leaf. There was upper epidermis, then there was palisade mesophyll, which was column-like cells, and then there was spongy mesophyll, which is like mesophyll region, which will have lot of chloroplast within them. So that is what they are mentioning about. Now again, this part we all know what are different conditions required for photosynthesis. Obviously sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide, water. What is the raw material that is required for photosynthesis? It is carbon dioxide and water. So sometimes, because I have kept it here because I have seen some questions being asked based on these two conditions necessary, will also include both of these, that is carbon dioxide and water, and raw material is surely of them. And apart from that, there are these different photosynthetic pigment which are required depending on the type of the plant, that is chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, xanthophylls, and carotenoids. So these are the different photosynthetic pigment. I will also show you the structure of chlorophyll in the later part. This part again we had seen probably during the last transpiration. Means we had that briefing around how is the carbon dioxide entering the plant. So this is obviously when the stomata, they are wide open, it will allow the exchange of gases, so the carbon dioxide can come in. And how the stomata open and close, that you already know, so that I am not going to explain again and again. So that is what this point talks about, how the plant obtain the carbon dioxide, that is through opening of the stomata, which is ultimately due to the turgidity of the guard cells. And then you have to quickly mention of how is this turgidity gained by the guard cells and how is the stomata open. Then how does the plant obtain water? This is what was the first roots absorption by roots, whole chapter was it about. So again, I am not going to discuss it here. You know it very well, how the roots they absorb water for the process of photosynthesis, how the water moves throughout the plant, that ascent of sap and so on. So this part is also, I assume, very clear to everyone. I'm kind of skipping through a lot of content because it will just become repetitive otherwise. Now, one of the important topic, the factors which affect the process of photosynthesis. First be light intensity. Now, it's a common thing that we know of, that increased light intensity will increase the rate of photosynthesis. And the simplest reason being, more intensity, more energy will be gained by the chlorophyll pigment, more energy will be transferred to different molecules, and that way they will synthesize more glucose, so ultimately which is more photosynthesis. and low intensity will exactly cause this opposite of this effect. Concentration of CO2, again higher the concentration helps in increasing the rate of photosynthesis. Usual concentration that is present is 300 to 400 parts per million, ppm, and it is adequate for the photosynthesis. So if it is higher than that, it is surely going to be much more beneficial. So that is the concentration of CO2 or carbon dioxide. Temperature, optimum temperature is required here, not higher temperature, but what we call as optimum temperature, that is 25 to 35 degree. If that temperature is present, the photosynthesis will happen at the highest rate. If it is lower than 25, it will reduce. If it is higher than 35, it might cause degradation of the plant cells. So that may not be really helpful for the plant. So that is optimum temperature. Water, of course, we know its deficiency can lead to wilting of the leaves. Ultimately, turgidity will be lost. Ultimately, carbon dioxide will not be taken in. Water will not be present for the photosynthesis function and so on. So water is one of the important factor. The scarcity of the water leads to the refusal of stomatal opening to retain the amount of water they have stored inside. So that is what is the general phenomenon, but this may not be true with the cactus family. So that is a separate thing. Pollution, industrial pollution or other particle may settle on the leaf surface, and that way they can block the pores of the stomata, which ultimately makes it difficult to take in the carbon dioxide, and that is what is the effect of pollution on the photosynthesis. That means higher the pollution, particles will settle or might settle on the leaf surface, ultimately affecting the intensity of the light, and that thereby the production of the photosynthesis products. I assume there are no questions in this part as well. So the next part is the photosynthesis equation, which is commonly written as 6CO2 plus 6H2O. Again, this is a balanced equation, so you need to be more careful about when you write it. 6CO2 plus 6H2O, it will form say 6H12O6 plus 6O2. So that is the general photosynthesis reaction. And of course, you can write here sunlight, energy, and so on. So that is the that is just the photosynthesis equation. I don't think there is anything else to explain there. Now, unlike plants, this is interesting part. Certain bacteria that perform photosynthesis, they do not produce oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. And such bacteria, they are called as unoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. And the bacteria that do produce oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, they are called as oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. In usually most of the cases, because these bacteria, they are deep in the deep layers, so they may not get carbon dioxide for their photosynthesis. So they utilize the already present, or rather they may not get carbon dioxide in sufficient amount. So they will utilize all whatever is left over from the previous processes or by the breakdown of certain neighboring compounds, and they will generate certain carbon dioxide that will be used for the what we call as photosynthesis reaction. So that is why it has these two types, unoxygenic and oxygenic. Okay, now this should be totally new topic to you all, which is the structure of the chloroplast. Structure within the this chloroplast structure is within the cells of the plant and the green algae, of course. It is the site of photosynthesis, in which the process of conversion of light energy into chemical energy happens, and the resulting ultimately into the energy rich organic compound, which is nothing but the glucose and of course the oxygen. Now, photosynthetic cyanobacteria, which is one category of the cyanobacteria, they are free-living close relatives of the chloroplast. Close relatives in this sense, they always occur sometimes together in terms of also evolutionarily conserved and so on. But that we did not talk about. And so the endosymbiotic theory. Endosymbiotic means within a particular structure, both of the cyanobacteria as well as those cells in which these bacteria are living in, they are living in symbiosis. So that endosymbiotic theory points that chloroplast and mitochondria, they are descended from such organism. That means the whatever like organs are present in human being, like mitochondria for example, that is descended from this photosynthetic cyanobacteria. So earlier in the process of evolution, these cyanobacteria, they have had certain energy generating organelle that got evolved into chloroplast, which got evolved separately into the mitochondrial structure, which is the energy house of the human cell. Now, chloroplast, these are a type of plastid that we already know. So again, you must have studied this, what are plastids, what are chromoplast and so on. So chloroplast, these are a type of plastid, a round and oval disc shaped body, and it is involved in the storage as well as synthesis of the food material. So this is the general structure of the chloroplast, which is kind of cut open from one angle so that you can see the internal structure. This is the representative diagram. So chloroplasts, these are distinguished from other types of plastid by their green color, which results from the presence of pigment chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Both of these pigments, they are present in the chloroplast structure in the form of chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Okay, I guess, yeah, we can do this part completely. So this is how a chloroplast looks like. So this is like a capsule-like body which contains outer membrane. It has inner membrane. So you can see outer membrane is relatively, not relatively, it's dark green, and inner membrane is light green. And also the thickness will also vary, though it may not represent directly in the structure. So yeah, the chloroplasts, they are roughly around 1 to 2 micrometer thick and 5 to 7 micrometer in diameter. And they are mostly present in the parenchyma cell because they are the most actively dividing cells. They are the ones which are part of the mesophyll layer, right? That is what is mesophyll parenchyma or spongy parenchyma, you can call it so. Now, enclosed in a chloroplast envelope, it consists of a double membrane with outer and inner layers, and the gap between them is called as intermembrane space. So this space between the outer membrane and the inner membrane, the kind of black thing you can see, or other black area, that is the intermembrane space. That means between two membrane, between inner and outer membrane, that space is present. That is intermembrane space. A third internal membrane, extensively folded and characterized by the presence of closed disc, which is called as thylakoids, is known as thylakoid membrane. Now, if you again go back to the diagram, so these are the thylakoids, which are nothing but the even more folded internal structure. So there will be something called as thylakoid, which is a disc-like material, which is still covered. Then there will be outer membrane, sorry, inner membrane, and then there will be outer membrane. So that is the general arrangement of this thylakoid. In most of the higher plants, thylakoids, they are arranged in the tight stacks, what we call as grana. Singular is granum for that, grana is the plural. So it's like you keep plates one above the other, and that stack you get, it is something like thylakoids or grana, and individually these plates, they will be called as thylakoids. So again, if we look at this part, so this individual disc is the thylakoid. All of these discs, they are individually thylakoid, and one whole bunch, this whole bunch, or like it, you can see it here, the whole bunch that is being shown on the side, that is granum, that is singular, and all of these, when they are in bunch, they will be called as grana. So that is granum or granum. Grana, they are connected by the stromal lamellae. Stromal refers to the space between the organelles, that is stroma. So stromal lamellae, lamellae refers to the connection, which is nothing but the connection between the stromal space. So this is the stroma, right? This space between the thylakoids. So let's say you have a bag, you put bottles or kind of discs in it, one on top of other. So whatever remaining space will be apart from this disc, that will be stroma, which is the kind of empty space. Empty does not literally mean empty. It will obviously have certain components within it, like water or minerals and so on. But compared to, it is not occupied by the structure. That is what it means by empty. So there will be stroma between thylakoids, and you can see here stroma lamellae, which is the connection link between two thylakoid structures, right? It is not the connection link between two grana, remember it. It is connection link between the two thylakoid discs. That is what is the chloroplast structure. Yeah, and obviously grana are connected by the stromal lamellae extension that runs from one granum through the stroma to the neighboring granum. That is quite obvious. And the thylakoid membrane envelops a central aqueous region, which is known as thylakoid lumen. So within the thylakoid disc, if you cut it open, what you get is the thylakoid lumen, and the space between the inner membrane and the thylakoid membrane is filled with the stroma. So the space which is present between the inner membrane and the thylakoid membrane is filled with the stroma. So that is what was the stroma that we spoke of earlier. So this inner membrane and the thylakoid structure, whole of this empty space that we see is made up of stroma, which is a matrix containing dissolved enzymes, starch granules, and copies of the chloroplast genome. So there are again various components present in the chloroplast, which we will see here during the process of photosynthesis answer. So in short, if I have to revise whole of this, there will be outer membrane, there is inner membrane. Within inner membrane, all of it will be stroma. Stroma is the empty space within the inner membrane. In between inner and outer membrane, there will be intermembrane space. Around within the stroma layer, there will be so many disc-like structure which are called as thylakoids. They are arranged in a stack. That stack is known as granum in singular, grana in plural. Individually, these thylakoids, they will contain certain chemicals. Sorry, where is it? Yeah, they will contain a matrix with dissolved enzymes, starch granules, copy of chloroplast genome, and so on. So that way they will contain quite a lot of material within this individual disc. You can see these ones are cut open just to show you that something does exist inside this thylakoid structure. So that is the thylakoid, and between the grana you will find this stroma lamellae. So that is the whole structure of the chloroplast. Again, you might have to revise this diagram by drawing it so that you remember it very well. I guess for today I will stop here. In the next class, we will look at the light photosynthetic reaction and the dark photosynthetic reaction. So what exactly are these? That is what we will see in the next class.